without further ado, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Ryan, thank you very much. Thank you for also putting this whole thing together. I just want to make sure before I get started, everybody should have 2 pieces of information, a FERS handbook and a blue folder. Make sure you have both, okay? Now, the book we're not going to use so much. This is going to be a reference for you to use when you go home, okay? The information on your benefits will be up here in PowerPoint. It's based on what you have in the book, okay? So this will be something that you can review. If you have questions on a specific part of your benefits, you can always use this. We use FedWeek. It's a great resource for a very specific reason. You can get to the information that you need very quickly, okay? So that's the reason you have that. So our material up here that you will see is based on what you have in the book on your benefits, okay? Now, on the blue folder, if you could open it up, just a couple quick things. If you could go to the right side, okay? It says Building Your Financial Future. This is the main handout which we're going to work off of. This is a copy of every PowerPoint slide. We have 312 slides here. Okay, do the math. Okay, we got 2 days with you. We will take 8 hours a day. Okay, we have a lot to cover. And let me explain why you have so much, because that is probably going through your mind right now. The mission of this class is not for you to become an expert on your benefits package, okay? That's not the mission. The mission of this class is for you to personalize what you have here, okay? My point is we're going to give you a lot of systems and processes that'll help you personalize this stuff. I don't want to stand up here and start telling you what to do because I don't know you well enough. But I'm going to give you a system for each aspect of your benefits package. Our hope is you'll take those systems and processes and apply them to your benefits so you can make the right answer for yourself. Processes solve problems, okay? So with that said, please take notes right all over this, all right? I also know something else. For every 5 people that are here right now, 4 of you are never going to open this up ever again. But you're more likely to remember something that you write down than something that you don't write down. If there's something you need to remember today, just write it down. Okay, and the other thing I'll tell you regarding taking notes, please write down things in your words, not mine. People try to do that, like, can you repeat that again? And they try to write it. Everybody has their own learning style. So just write it down in the style in which you retain information. Okay, that's the more important thing, okay? Just interpret what I'm saying and put it down. If you need clarification, stop me and I'll be happy to do that, okay? So write all over this, follow along. We have a couple of separate slides. These slides that are underneath your handout, we have them integrated in the program here, okay? Just on Title 32, just the rules and things like that. We have them mixed into the program up here, but you have these extra slides here for Title 32. And with that said, also, I didn't mention the folks in HRO, they are, if you have any questions on your benefits, contact information, wonderful resource, very conscientious. They stay in contact with us, letting us know changes that have occurred in your benefits. Please use them as a resource. If you have questions specifically regarding your personal situation, they are back there, and you can talk to them about your personal circumstances, okay? If you have questions on how things work in your benefits, feel free to stop me as we go along. They'll chime in, and I'll hit your questions, and we'll go from there. Stop me at any time. Other thing I want you to take out that I want you to keep in front of you guys. The other thing I want to point out, in the back left side of your handout, it says FERS Administrative Timeline Checklist. It's the second to last thing. I would like for you to keep that out. And here's the reason why. You know and I know right now we are too accessible. We have too many demands on our time. 5 minutes after this class is going to become a distant memory. And if you don't have an action plan or a to-do list, you're going to end up doing nothing, and you're no better off than what you were yesterday. So you're basically an educated derelict, and I don't want that to happen. You need to have an action plan walking out of here, okay? This is what I have up here. I have basically a checklist of the things you need to get in order before you retire. Okay, now certain things you've done on this list, I want you to highlight the things that you need to get in order. There's one thing I want you to look at in this entire blue folder, it's this, okay? So based on the questions that we get today, I might say you need to highlight this in your action plan. And just go knock those things out, because if you do that, you'll be a heck of a lot better off, okay? So keep those 2 things out, and I think that'll help in this process here, okay? All right, this is a 4-module class, just so you know. Let me explain the agenda, and we're going to get into the PowerPoint. The first module, we're going to basically cover the process, the psychology, and the aspects of planning, the mental barriers in planning for retirement. We got to establish the right system. There's a planning system for retirement that nobody ever tells you about. Everybody's commoditized everything. And because of that, we're not getting the answers that we're looking for. Because everybody that we hear is talking about what they deal with. So it's been commoditized. So we're going to give you an overall planning system. We're going to talk about the psychology of it too. Most of our barriers are self-imposed, and we got to go overcome those things so we can get the answers that we're looking for. So we're going to discuss those self-imposed barriers. Now I'm going to take you through the paperwork and the admin. You're going to do a budgeting exercise this morning, also a defining success exercise. Okay, we're going to do a couple exercises this morning, and then I'm going to talk about a general process that'll tie all of your benefits together into one neat model so you can prioritize your decision making. Okay, you got to plan in order. Okay, so we're going to do that. This afternoon, we're going to discuss your FERS benefit and your Social Security benefits. Okay. So you're going to get a 20 to 30 minute break this morning. You're going to get a lunch break. You get a break in the afternoon. We're going to discuss your FERS annuity and your Social Security benefits. Okay? Tomorrow morning, I will be back up. I'm going to break down all of your insurances. Your life insurance, which is FEGLI, health insurance, FEHB. We'll talk about TRICARE. We're going to talk about Medicare, and we'll talk about the voluntary long-term care program. Okay? We'll talk about those 4 things. A lot of topics. That'll take us up till lunch. We'll spend the entire afternoon discussing your thrift. Okay, so we're going to cover it, and we'll also cover dental and vision and all of that. So we will cover everything in this class. And we'll mix in Title 32. What your status is Title 32 employees, I guess you could say. So we'll tie all of that in together. If you could, open up the PowerPoint. We'll get rolling. Stop me at any time. If you have a question on how something works, stop me at any time, okay? If you think I'm full of it, stop me at any time. Challenge me. If you go, I think you're nuts, stop me. That's okay. Okay, I'd rather have you say it than think it and not do anything, okay? I'll discuss anything, okay? Our firm is Wankin Advisors. I believe this is the second go-around coming out and working with Ryan and the folks here, and it's been an absolute privilege. We were working at Indiantown Gap last year, and this year we're out here, and it's a privilege to be here. We travel throughout the United States conducting these classes. We teach approximately before COVID about 150 days a year, traveling throughout the entire country. My name's Chris Lenz. I'm going to take you through half the program. Mr. Hanasak's going to take you through the other half. He'll take you through the afternoon. Those letters after our name are our certification. I just want to hit on some couple housekeeping items. We have a certification. We specialize in the CSRS FERS retirement systems, and we have this designation for a very specific reason. Number one, we have a specialist desk. I want you to know something. You have great folks that'll help you on your benefits, but you can also use us as a resource if you like. If you have a weird, unique situation where you're having a hard time getting an answer, we have a specialist desk that can research questions. I'm talking about you've been married like 5 times, you don't know who's entitled to what. We'll research questions like that are kind of out there, and it'll take 2 to 3 days, but we can get you an answer. Also, our information's current. Our information, we get tested on your benefits every year. Our information in this program will reflect the CARES Act and the Secure Act, which affected your thrift and your health care. So our slides are up to date. That's all I'm saying here. And being part of this society, we have the capacity and ability to do that. We get information as your benefits change. And we have the software and support that enable us to help federal employees plan for the future. This is our disclaimer. It's basically what I said before. I'm not going to tell you what to do, okay? Please don't think I'm telling you to retire, not retire, to change how you're putting your money in your thrift. It'd be the most irresponsible thing I could do. We will give you systems that'll help you figure out what you should. If you follow the system, you'll get your answer. I promise you. Ask any question on how something works. I will make sure you get a satisfactory answer. Something personal, if you really want to talk to me about it, I would recommend pulling me aside on a break. And I'm not even then going to tell you what to do. I'll give you a couple different options. I'll ask you a couple, like, why are you asking me this? And then based on that, I'll give you a couple different options. That'll be the extent of it. I appreciate you understanding that. Also, if you have a retirement planner or an accountant or an attorney, whoever you get financial advice from, bring these systems to them. It'll help you in your work with them, in your relationship with them, okay? Appreciate you understanding that. Let's get into the program. We're going to talk about the planning process first. Listen, I know a lot of people that are like, I know how to plan. Listen, most of us have psychological barriers we're not even aware of. And we got to hit on these things, okay? We've got to have the right process that is workable and usable. Because if we don't, a couple things, we run into problems, and we never get full completion of our planning. So I want to talk about this process. Now, in this process, I want to talk about the first step for a very specific reason. If you're an engineer, the first step is very important because it's going to get you to where you need to be. First step's most important. And if you get the first step right, you'll get to your definition, or you'll get pretty close. And in teaching this class, I always bring up an individual. His name is Stephen Covey. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Stephen Covey. Usually folks that are getting ready to retire have. He was a best-selling author. He wrote a book about 30 years ago called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I don't know whether you took the Stephen Covey course that a lot of supervisors had to take, but this book kind of changed the workplace, and I want to explain why it's relevant for this class. Stephen Covey had a premise that if you want to become more effective as a person, you had to incorporate 7 specific habits into your life. The book consisted of listing each habit and explaining how incorporating that habit into your life would make you more effective as a person. Well, for the sake of this class, there was one habit that he mentioned, and if you read the book, you probably remember it. There was one habit in that book that really is the first step in planning for retirement, and that habit was begin with the end in mind. Begin with the end in mind. What did he mean by that? What he meant by that is any task we take on before we start that task, we have to answer a very important question. What's my personal definition of success? See, everybody has to define what success is to them. What's your personal definition of success? Now, that sounds elementary, and you're thinking, I know that already, you're wasting my time. I want you to think about this a second. How many people take the time to do it? Very few people do. Very few people do. And that's the problem with retirement planning. We leave money on the table because we are not linking our short-term decisions with our long-term goals. The long-term and the short-term thinking are not linked together, and we're not leveraging this stuff in the way that we should. You know, your last healthcare open season, or any open season for that matter, how many people really thought about their long-term definition of success before they made that decision? Most people with their healthcare, when I talk to them, are like, I'll do that again. It didn't hurt me last year. Might as well do it again. You're leaving money on the table, and when we cover your healthcare benefits specifically, you're going to see how much money you're leaving on the table. And my point is, because we're not thinking about that, we're not taking advantage of it. At the point of contact, we're not taking advantage of it. And so we got to start there. This definition of success has got to be in the back of your mind throughout this whole program. Because if it's not, I'm telling you right now, 2 things are going to happen, and they're both bad. The first thing that's going to happen is you're going to confuse activity with productivity. See, unfortunately, the problem with what we all do is we're active in our planning. We do things. If I've asked you if you ever planned for retirement, you would tell me yes. And if I asked you what did you do, you would tell me you threw more money in your thrift, because that's what most people tell me. Now, I'm glad to hear that you certainly helped yourself by doing that. You're actively doing something. My question to you is it the most productive thing you could be doing? See, unless you define success, you don't know that. Now, you're probably thinking right now, well, what could be more productive than that? We cover everything there is to know in your benefits. I am willing to bet you, especially with you guys in your status, I'm willing to bet you there's going to be a few people walking out these doors at the end of 2 days going, I would be better off doing this part of my benefits package, taking advantage of this, than even my thrift. Because the return on investment, maybe for you guys in other parts, will be a little bit better. You'll have some tax incentives, but unless you define success, you're not going to know that. And I got news for you. It is not enough to be active. You have to be productive. And the reason why I say that is time. We are too accessible now. We are too accessible, and because of that, we have a lack of time. We have much less time on our hands than what we had 5 years ago because of our phones. I mean, I think we suffer from digital deluge. I mean, we're deluged with everything. We go on one website, we get deluged with information on that one topic that we looked up. We suffer from digital distraction. You're getting pinged, emailed, texted while I'm talking to you, and you're half focused. Okay? I mean, these things, and because of that, we fail in our digital being able to deduct and make decisions. We suffer from digital dementia too. Our phone memorizes everything for us, and our brains are getting lazy. And we've got to get back to defining what these things mean and how we can use it for ourselves at a very elementary level. Okay? Because if you don't, it is not enough to be active. We don't have the time anymore. When you walk out these doors, we're too accessible. This thing's going to become a distant memory in 5 minutes. Now, the other reason is if you don't define success for yourself, somebody will end up defining it for you. Now, what do I mean by that? I see it all the time. You know, you guys are entitled to a retirement benefit analysis from us because you came here today, if you'd like one done, okay? And we do about $2,000 a year, but let me explain why I'm bringing this up. I have talked to people and doing reports for people, projections who have attended our class, and they'll go, well, what funds are you in the thrift in? Which funds are you positioned in? And, we'll get some different answers. And when we do, if it seems unusual, we'll go, well, that's a little bit unusual. What made you do it? You know what typically the answer is? My friend's doing it. Friend Sam. Who's Sam? The guy I have lunch with. What else? He seems smart. He dresses well. Look like he got a few dollars. So I figured he's all in the C fund. I figured I might as well be. And at the end of 2019, that looked pretty good because the market was at record highs. So Sam was brilliant. I was doing the same thing he did. And then March hit of this year. The market drops 35%. Sam's an idiot overnight. And we're blaming Sam, or we're blaming the C fund. That wasn't the problem. The problem was I took Sam's value. See, this is the problem. Sam's got a different definition of success. Sam's got a different time horizon when Sam needs his money. Sam's got a different tolerance for risk when it comes to saving and investing. Sam's got a different family situation. But because he's happy, I'm now incorporating his value proposition into my life. When you define success, you start looking critically at what people are telling you. Your friends are trying to help you. There's no denying that. But you can't deny they have a different definition of success. We have to be clear on that. What do we care about? Because once you define that, you got to start, as we start going through this stuff, you got to be constantly thinking, and I want you to put it on paper. How can I use this information that they're going through? When will I use this information? And quite frankly, why would I use this information? That's got to be answered, but you've got to have in the back of your mind your definition of success. So with that said, I'm going to give you 60 seconds. I'm going to give you 80 seconds, but I want you to pull out this defining success exercise. I want you to put pen to paper. Listen, this is between you and yourself. I'm not going to ask anybody what they wrote down, but I want you to have this in the back of your mind as I'm covering this stuff. We're going to go further, but I want you to start here. I want you to answer 3 basic questions. When do I want to retire? Who do I want to retire with? And what are my hobbies and activities, okay? I'm going to give you 60 seconds, or 80 seconds. We'll start right now. Go. Okay, we got about 20 seconds left. Okay. That might maybe seems a little bit hokey to you, but I know that if you have those things in the back of your mind as I cover this stuff, it's going to make you think of things, regardless of what you think. Okay. Now, I'm not going to ask anybody what to put down. It's between you and yourself. Okay. Now, the thing I want to point out here is it is not enough to have a definition of success. I wanted you to create a vision on that piece of paper because without vision, the people perish. And so I want you to have a vision. But listen, if you don't have a way or a process or a means of getting there, this is nothing more than a dream of what you have on that paper. So I want to talk about the objectives that we have for this class. It's going to be how we instruct you in this class. We feel if you embrace these objectives, you will get to your definition of success. I can almost guarantee it. Not quite guarantee it, but I can almost guarantee it. And if you don't, you will get a heck of a lot closer than what you were before. Okay, we have 5 objectives for this class. Okay, now I'm going to go through each one in a little bit more detail, but they are educating you on the process of retirement planning. Okay, understanding your role. You're the quarterback whether you like it or not. Number 3, now when I stress the word if you have a retirement planner, view him as a coach. Okay, we're going to talk about the mistake there. Also, number 4, that's the important one, providing solutions for the gap in between. If you embrace that one, you're going to be able to see exactly where you stand towards your goals regarding retirement. You will see exactly where you stand. I don't care whether it's your first or your last day of work. If you embrace this, you will see where you stand. Okay? And then number 5, the difference between knowing and doing. It's not enough to know you have a problem. You got to do something about it. So let's talk about each one briefly. Okay, the process of retirement planning. This is the first mistake that people make. People think of retirement as an event. When they turn in their, they think of retirement as when they turn in their 3107 package and they're retired. And see, unfortunately, that's the biggest mistake people make. Retirement is not an event. It is a process. And I'm telling you right now, that's a big mistake younger people make. They start work, they're like, I can't even relate to retirement. I got plenty of time. I don't need to do anything right now other than survive. Because it's so far off, I can't even relate to it. I have no sense of urgency. And if you right now, you're pre-retirees, if you have kids at that age, you're probably frustrated with them because they're not thinking about it. Well, right now, they're thinking of it. The problem is they're thinking of it as an event. And so there's no sense of urgency in doing it. Now, for you guys, you're thinking, okay, I'm close. That day is about ready to happen. Once I turn in that paperwork, I got to make sure everything's in order. I'm turning in that paperwork and it's done. It's not done. Retirement planning's never going to end. It starts the day you become financially independent. It's going to end the day you die. And I'm going to prove it to you right now. Do you know anybody retired right now? I want you to think about those people you know that are retired right now. Do they look like they've stopped making decisions on their money? They're making a decision right now what to have for breakfast. You're making a decision every day in retirement on what to do with your money. Retirement planning is never going to end. It starts the day you become financially independent, and it ends the day you die. And this is a mistake that people make. They make decisions in their benefits package because a guy like me is spouting off what you should do, and it boxes yourself in forever. And then life has a way of changing in ways that you'd never expected. Something happens in your life, and that great decision you were told to do is now the worst thing you could have ever done because your life has changed. Or maybe your values have changed. Also, that's the other thing. Values change, and so do circumstances. And my point is, we have to have the ability to evolve and change with, because it is an evolving, changing process. So here's what we're going to do as we break down your benefits. We're going to show you how you can make choices in your benefits package that will give yourself the opportunity to make more choices down the road. This is critical, folks. We're going to show you how to make choices that'll take you in the direction of where you need to go, but it'll give you more options as your life changes and evolves. Because that's the biggest mistake people make. They make choices that box themselves in forever. And we're going to refer to this in a term. It's called financial pivoting. Financial pivoting. And when we show you these pivot plays, we're going to show you how you can make a choice, but if your life changes, you can adjust and change. Okay, we're going to give you 7 financial pivots in this class. They are as valuable as the money you're going to get in your benefits. You can't put a price on a pivot play. You really can't. We have them highlighted in red up here. Okay? But as we break down your benefits, we're going to show you your pivot plays and things that you can adjust and change and that you're not locked in forever. Okay? They are invaluable. So whether you ever think you're going to use these pivot plays, at least know them. That would be what I would encourage. I'll give you an example of a pivot play that we're going to show you tomorrow. Do you know you can recycle money in your benefits? You guys can put money toward a part of your benefits package, and if you don't use that money, you can take it and recycle it towards something else. This stuff is all legal, but nobody approaches their planning in this way. You can do that. You can recycle your money towards something else. This stuff's all legal, and we got to approach it that way, okay? Now, second objective is understanding your role in this. You're the quarterback, whether you like it or not. If you're not a football fan, I apologize, but I want to discuss what a quarterback actually does. What's a quarterback's job? When you think about a quarterback, what do they do? Run the offense. Their job is to execute. Run the offense. Execution falls on the quarterback. The play doesn't start unless the quarterback says it starts. Your job, your role in this is execution. You have to execute your plan. You can't hire anybody to do that. That is your job. It's not HR's job. It's not OPM's job. It's not Congress's job. It's not your union. If you're part of a union, it's not their job. It's your job. You better embrace this. You know why? Because employers are passing on the burden of retirement planning more and more to the employee. It's a reality of the world. Not just for federal employees, but everybody. They're passing on the burden of retirement planning more and more to us. And I'm not saying this to stress you out. I am not. I think you have a tremendous opportunity if you change your thinking. You know, you guys are a perfect example of this, as a matter of fact. Do you guys know any CSRS employees? I don't know whether you do. You know any CSRS folks? They almost get twice the pension that you get, the defined benefit plan. It's almost twice. And I'm not saying this to get you upset because I think you have a better plan. As a matter of fact, I just taught a CSRs class last week. As a matter of fact, they're typically more stressed out about their retirement than you guys are. And they have twice the pension benefit that you guys get. Now, when they made the change in 1984, what did they give you guys in return? They gave you two things. So they cut your benefit in half, but they gave you two things. Social Security, they wanted you paying into the system. And what else did they give you? Match on the thrift, right? They gave you a match on the thrift. I want you to think about it. With every change, they're sending you a message. We're going to cut your benefit in half, your guaranteed income. We're going to match your thrift. What's the message? The days of us doing it all for you are over. We're willing to help you if you're willing to help yourself. If you're not going to be willing to help yourself, you're probably not going to get there. Now listen, that usually bothers people when I tell them that. Listen, you have a tremendous opportunity if you look at it the right way. I said before, CSRs people are typically more stressed out. And this is the reason. You get something that they don't, and it's what we all want when it comes to our money. And what is it that we want when it comes to our money? Yeah, that's good. Nobody ever says that to me. Everybody always says, I want more. That's the reason I'm here. By having more, what do you get? He said it. I never hear that. I get control. You want to, I get people telling me all the time, I want low stress, low anxiety when it comes to my retirement. I just want to be stressed out. Good. Take control. They're giving you the opportunity to take control. Embrace it and take control. If they do it all for you, they can take it from you too. That's the reason CSRs people are stressed out. I'm telling you, every time I teach a CSRs class, like last week, what have you heard about legislation? Are they going to take my stuff? I hear that all the time. I taught one last week. What are they taking from me? And they're basing their retirement well-being on the base budget negotiation between Congress and any White House. They're always worried about it. Been doing this 16 years. It's always the same for them. And my point is, when they, you guys, they're passing on that burden to you. You can take control and own it. And it's a paradigm shift where you're just saying, it's my job. And if you do that, I'm telling you right now, your anxiety level will drop. And if you doubt me, I want you to think about your lives to this point. I want you to think about this point in your life where you've had low levels of stress and anxiety and you've had high levels of stress and anxiety. The circumstances where you feel like you have low levels of stress and anxiety are when you feel like you're in control. When you're in control of a circumstance, it could be your family, it doesn't even have to be your finance, it could be your family, it could be your careers, it could be a lot of things. But when you're in circumstances of control, you feel a lot better about it than if you feel like there's a lack of control. So embrace it. Take control. Execute, okay? Now, I'm going to ask you two questions, and I want you to think about these things, because this is going to determine your effectiveness as your own personal quarterback. The two questions are, you might walk out of here at the end of 2 days coming to the realization, after I give you the system, you might walk out of here at the end of 2 days coming to the realization that you don't have enough to retire on. Would that be bad or good? If you found out you didn't have enough. Most people tell me bad, but I would submit to, somebody said good, which I'm glad to hear because I would submit to you it's good. And the reason why is there's something you can do about it. Don't let fear get in the way of finding out where you truly stand. You're better off finding out today that you don't have enough because you got pivot plays, you got options, as opposed to going out the door, retiring, and going, geez, this ain't not enough to pay my rent. You don't have too many pivot plays at that point. Whatever you find out is a good thing. Second question I have for you is, should your opinion of your benefits affect when you should go out and retire? Your opinion of your benefits. I want you to think about that a second. Should your opinion of your benefits affect when you can retire? See, most people tell me yes. I would submit to you your opinion has no bearing on it. You know why? Do the math. Math is math. You know what retirement planning is? Money coming in, money going out. If you base your decision on your opinion, you're going to be basing it on the three closest people you work with. If you're working with three depressed people, you're going to think you can never retire when maybe you can. Just do the math. Math is math. It's money coming in, money going out. Okay? So don't let your opinion get in the way of it. Don't let your opinion get in the way of it. Just do the math. Approach it logically. Okay? So, again, we just got to look at these things differently. Now, you're the quarterback, your retirement planner, whoever they are. Maybe you have one, maybe you don't. Maybe you might not even need one. I don't even know. But I want to talk about the role of a retirement planner serving the role of coach. Most people don't leverage their retirement planners in the way that they should. You know why? Because they don't view them as coaches. They view them as fortune tellers. They do. And what I mean by that is I run into people, I've been doing this pretty long time, and people's opinion of their retirement planners based on what the market's doing. They're brilliant if the market's up, and they're an idiot if it's down. I see it all the time. I have people complain about their retirement planner in March. How couldn't they have seen this? What, are you kidding? This thing like overtook the world. I mean, you know, that's my point. So they're like, why? How couldn't you have predicted the future and avoided that down, drop in the market? And that's part of the problem. Nobody can predict all world events. So we're viewing them as fortune tellers and soothsayers. You got to view them as a coach. And let me define what a coach does. A coach motivates, teaches, puts together a game plan based on research. And a retirement planner should be doing the same stuff. They should be putting together a retirement plan, and maybe they have. Maybe you have a retirement planner that did research and talked to you and put together a plan. And they reviewed the plan with you. And a coach does the same thing. You know, the Steelers are playing the Giants. They're watching game film of the other team, putting together a game plan, and then Ben Roethlisberger practices it, and they take the field. And they were successful against the Giants. They won. But my point is, Mike Tomlin showed up for the game, their coach. Why? Why should the coach show up the game if Ben practiced that game plan to perfection during the week? Why does a coach bother showing up for the game? See, we don't have an expectation of a retirement planner for this, by the way. Why does he show up for the game? Because things change. Yeah, the Giants have a game plan too. It wasn't very good, but they had a game plan. But my point is, the other team's got a game plan too. Not everything is going to go according to plan. And that's the reason the coach shows up. And that's how you got to view him. Is a coach, because otherwise, listen, your retirement planner has no clue the impact that COVID's going to have for the next couple of years. There's just no way. They're lying to you if they know. Okay, it's just there's no way. The impact, the amount of money we've printed, and think about other world events, not even that, but just think about Russia and the Ukraine. Think about North Korea, China, the trade wars we got going on there. That's spilled over into, there's a currency war going on in this world right now. Countries are printing money like it's going out of style. There's a currency war going on. And my point is, if you don't think these things are going to have an impact on your C, S, I, F, and G funds, hey, listen, COVID's affected your G. It's affected your G fund. This stuff, and there's no way nobody's going to be able to predict world events, let alone the impact it's going to have on these things. So you got to evaluate your coach. Are they showing up for that game? Are they making adjustments and talking to you, giving you pivot plays, those type of things? Because that's the role of a coach. And if you do that, you'll be able to leverage them to get to where you need to be. Okay? Now, some people think they need a coach because I've had people go, you know what, I think I need a coach. Never thought I did, but I need one. And I'll go, well, why do you need a coach? And I typically get an answer that I don't really agree with. Now, you could disagree with me, but I get people telling me all the time, like, I don't know enough. Yeah, you do. You know enough. I don't even know you, and I would say to you, you know enough. You know why I say that? It's one word. It's called Google. You can Google anything and get an answer. Now, how right it is, who knows? But my point is, we've never had as much information at the tip of our fingers in the history of mankind than we have right now. So you know enough. I would submit to you, you know enough. Your lack of knowledge shouldn't be a reason that you need a coach. However, coaches should exist and do exist. Why? Because there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom. What gets in the way of transmuting knowledge into wisdom? There's things we know we should do, especially with our money, and we don't do it, let alone diets. I can't tell you how many diets I've done that I've failed. Why? What gets in the way of it? And I know I should do them. They'd help my health. What gets in the way of it? It's called emotion. Emotions get in the way of it. Do we have a tendency to become emotional when it comes to our money? If you don't think that emotions have an impact on our money decisions, you're crazy. And it's very subliminal. It's very subliminal, and it's hard to even recognize. And I want to point out something here. I'm going to prove to you right now you know enough to coach yourself, but I'm going to also show you with this slide the impacts that emotions have on our ability to accumulate wealth. Now, I don't want to talk above or below anybody here. But what I have up here, you guys familiar with the S&P 500 index? It's your C fund, just so you know. It's the underlying index for your C fund. I don't want to talk above or below anybody, but this is the average rate of return to your C fund from 2000 to 2019. Average rate of return was 6.1%. Not bad. I think I'd take that. We had 2 major drops in the market. I think I could live with that. Now, the average investor who put their money in that index over the same 20-year period of time did 2.5%, which is the best result I have seen in 16 years on that average investor compared to the actual performance. The average investor typically does a quarter to a third of the performance of the C fund. How could that be? How could that be? I'm going to prove to you right now you know enough to coach yourself, but the average investor does a quarter to a third of what the fund does. How could that be? When you invest your money, you're supposed to what? Buy? You don't need a coach. I mean, you think about it, you buy low, you sell high. See, what do most of us do? We do the direct opposite. We see something doing well. I mean, people were diving in the market at the end of 2019. It was cruising. CNBC's telling you every reason why you need to be in the market. And then COVID hits, and people get scared and they get out. 35% drop in 1 month. People, geez, what was I thinking? Are we ever going to come out of this thing? Those questions start going through your head, and you're like, I better get out before this thing gets even worse. And, 2008 is still fresh in the memory on top of it, and you're like, okay, we just had 2008. I don't want that to happen again. And we get out. And see, that's what happens. See, emotions get in the way of this. And listen, let me explain this. This is the first way. I'm going to say something pretty brash here, and I don't mean for it to be, but the system is designed for you to fail, and I'm going to give you 3 reasons why. The first reason, they don't mean for you to fail. They're not trying to fail you. But it's kind of designed for you to fail because we're emotional beings. I got on the back right side, I want you to pull this chart out. It's the year-by-year performance of your thrift. I just want to show you something here a second. This gentleman said you're supposed to buy low and sell high. Okay, now let me explain something here. Thrift at the end of every year. This is a breakdown of each fund in your thrift and its year-by-year performance over the last 13 years, okay? And I think it's great that they post these numbers. And at the beginning of every year, if you go into tsp.gov at the beginning of every year, they'll tell you what each fund did the previous year, which is nice of them to do. But this is how the system is designed for you to fail. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's say it's the beginning of 2018, and you're a conscientious retirement planner for yourself. You're good with your money, you're conscientious. So you're looking at 2017 and what it did. It's the beginning of 2018. Well, let me ask you, what funds stand out to you where you'd say, you know what, if I could have some money someplace, I think I'd have some there. What stands out to you? Well, good for you. That would have been a good move. See, most people, you know what catches their eye? The I and the C. That catches your eye, and you're like, I think, I got to have some money. I got to have it there. Now, listen, I'm not even saying that was the wrong thing to do. I'm just saying you're buying it high. Take a look at what it did the following year. So then we do our retirement homework at the beginning of 2019, and we go, boy, was I stupid. Get out of that. Let's go back to the G fund. And then the market recovers, and it does 22%. So at the beginning of 2020, I go, hey, look at that I fund again. It came back. That's the reason we're getting the numbers up here that we're getting. They don't mean for it to fail you, but when we take a look at these numbers like that, we evaluate it based on what we just did. That was a bad decision. I need to change it. This is more powerful than what we realize. We're part of an organization called the Behavioral Finance Network. It's an organization dedicated to studying human behavior when it comes to their money. There was a study done out of Duke University where they watched brain activity when they were showing people financial statements. And when they showed people financial statements where they were losing money, the part of the brain that got triggered was their amygdala. That's your fight or flight. And where they showed them a statement where they made money, they got a dopamine hit. That's what drug addicts get. Like, that's how powerful this stuff is. And can you control that? No, you can't. That's how innate this stuff is. And I want you to think about it. I mean, we don't look at it this way. We got to kind of, and that's the reason, if you need a coach, that would be a reason why, in my opinion. That would be a reason why. I mean, think about it. We're not looking at it logically. Look at 2008. iFund was down 42%. That would be like you going into Walmart with an idea what you want to buy, and you see it on sale for 42%, a big display, 42% off. What we typically do if it were like this, we'd go, 42% off? I was going to buy that. You know what? That's suspicious. I'll be back when it's regular price. They're doing something weird here. I mean, you wouldn't do, that's ridiculous. You would buy 2. You wouldn't buy 1. But yeah, when it comes to this, we do that. It's just really bizarre. So you can't deny the human behavior. So that would be a reason why you would want to engage a coach. Now listen, and one final thing on an engagement of a coach. If you do have a coach, one rule I would tell you, one rule of engagement. If they tell you to do something but you don't understand it, just don't do it. Because you'll end up getting divorced one day. You're setting yourself up for failure. Your brain cannot take a siesta because it's like, okay, I hired a coach. I don't need to even think about this anymore. If you don't understand it, don't do it. You'll hate their guts one day. Because if you catch the plan in process at the wrong time, you're going to haul off and blame them where they might not be wrong. They could be wrong, but my point is you still have to understand what they're telling you. Okay? You can't just say, you handle it, I don't even want to know. Okay? You got to understand what they're doing. Okay? A working knowledge of it. Okay? So, again, have a coach help you define your process. Okay, and plan emotionally, but then decide logically as you're executing your plan. All right, providing solutions for the gap in between. We'll have a board up here later on. I wish I could draw now, but I can't. But I'm going to try to do the best job I can on this. This is where the rubber meets the road. I want to talk about this one because this is where the rubber meets the road. It's the foundation of planning. Let's say as you were coming to this class today, you said to yourself, I am going to make it happen today. I am 100% committed to myself, to getting to my objectives. I don't have a choice. I have to get to my definition of success. I have to. And you were making that commitment to yourself. If you were going to make that commitment to yourself, what would be the very first thing you would do? If you were going to plan and get your answers, what would be the very first thing you would do? Because this is the second way the system is designed for you to fail. I'm not blaming you guys, by the way. It's the way the system is designed for you to fail.
Understand your revenue and understand your costs.
You're right. But you said it in order. You're right in what you said. You're absolutely right in what you said. But I want you to, it's psychological. He said, understand your revenue, understand your cost. Did you hear the order, though? Money coming in and then the money going out. Now, let me explain. That's where retirement planning breaks down. That's what most of us do. Okay? It is exactly what you said, but the order is the thing that matters there. Let me explain what I mean by that. I would challenge you after this class, go into Google and type in FERS retirement calculators. See how many you get. You're going to get about 50. Heck, we'll do a report for you. My point is, I'll tell you the problem with that. That's the first thing we do. See, if I asked you if you ever planned for retirement, people go, yeah, I planned for retirement. I go, what did you do? Well, I went in Federal Ballpark Estimator. That's the OPM calculator. I've had plenty of people go in there. Has anybody ever been in that, by the way? Okay, can I ask, I don't want to put you on the spot. Can I ask you a couple questions? Say whatever you want. I have no idea what you're going to say, but I'm going to ask you a couple questions. Say whatever you want, okay? This man was in Federal Ballpark. Let me explain how this can break down the process of planning. You go in there blindly. You plug in your numbers. If you know them, and you knew enough, obviously, to put numbers in there. Did you get a number coming out? Yes. Okay, good. So we got a number coming out. Say whatever you want. What was your response to the number?
It was positive.
Okay, that's good. Did anybody else do it? That's good. Good. I'm going to go into more why in a second here. Anybody else do it? I'm not putting anybody. You can say whatever you want. I'm not, Okay, he felt good about his number. Okay? I'm not saying he's right or wrong. I have no clue. But I would admit to you, when most people go in this order, they don't have a clue either. Because he could have said he was really disappointed by it. Now let me explain something. If he said he was disappointed by it, doesn't even make him right or wrong. I'll tell you the problem. Most people, when they plug it in first, because he said revenues first, this is what happens. We're happy or disappointed based on what we thought we were going to get. See, he felt pretty good about it because he's probably pretty educated on his benefits. He's pretty maybe sophisticated when it comes to this stuff. He had a good expectation of what he was going to get. So when that number kicked out of Federal Ballpark Estimator, he looked at it and went, it's about what I thought. I'm looking pretty good. Now, that number could have been a lot less, and then he would have been like, this is all I get? Boy, are they ripping me off. And then he's pouting at work. But my point is, neither person in that scenario is right. Because we're skipping a step. We're skipping a step. And that's the problem that we get into. We get a false sense of security or a false sense of anxiety based on the arbitrary number we just think we're entitled to. And so we have to add up everything. That's the reason I'm here. But we got to start before that. And that is defining, think Stephen Covey. We have to define success. We have to define success. So we have to define. I want you to think about this. We have to define what we're going to need or what we're going to want. I want you to think what you're going to need or what you're going to want on a monthly income basis. Define that. Whatever that number is, define it. Otherwise, because you know what will happen if I look at revenues first? I'll end up, the human nature is, if I want to retire bad enough, I'm going to lie to myself. Like he said, add up revenues, and that's fair. It is cash flow coming in and cash flow going out. But if I add up the revenues first, I'm going to try to justify, the temptation is to justify that number based on how bad I want to retire. That's not it's not going to cover my bills. I'll sell the house and move in my garage, or I'll move in with my kids. They had a great conversation with them last night, or something along those lines, and I justify the number. And I'm not living the way that I want to. So I got to let the chips fall where they may and define what I'm going to need or want. Monthly income. Why? Because that's how you get your checks. Once that is completed, then I add up everything I have. Now, this could happen in this exercise, folks. You might find out that what you have is not enough to fulfill what you need. But like that gentleman over there said, that would be a good thing to find that out. Because now it could create a very specific strategy to take care of that gap. But my level of specificity in taking care of that gap, it's much more specific now. I have a level of specificity in my planning I never had before. And that's my point. Do you think you're more motivated to save? Do you think you're more motivated to take advantage of the tax code? Take advantage of Social Security benefits? I mean, for heaven's sakes, you guys have been deployed. I mean, I want you to think about when people get deployed, what do they typically want to know? I mean, other than the pay and all the, that stuff and benefits, but what else do you guys want to know? You want to know why you're going. I would want to know. I'm sure you do too. And you typically want to know when you're coming back. That's all you're doing here. I mean, we have that expectation we get deployed of that. That should be the expectation. But when it comes to our money, we don't even put that expectation on ourselves. So you're defined, by doing it this way, you're defining what the mission is and you're defining when you can go home and retire. That's all I'm saying. It'll keep your morale up too. When it comes to this stuff, it'll keep your morale up. Now listen, you guys should be challenging me right now going, you're full of it, you're talking out of both sides of your mouth, you don't know what you're talking about. You really should be, because right now I'm a walking contradiction. Now, and I got to handle this objection. If you're not thinking, see, most people go, yeah, okay, that works logically what you just said. But that doesn't work in the real world. Why? Because right now I'm a walking contradiction. What was the first thing I said to you guys? You got to financially pivot. Why? Because your life is going to change, right? How's this for a walking contradiction? And I said this myself. This is me talking. I said you have to financially pivot because your life is going to change. Didn't I tell you? How far are you from retirement, if I might ask? You look younger, so. I mean, no, you all look young, but. 30 years. This guy's 30 years from retirement. How's this for a walking contradiction? I said his life is going to change, so he's got to financially pivot. Now he's got to figure out what he needs or wants 30 years from now. How's that for a walking contradiction? And he's shaking his head, giving me a dirty look right now. But my point is, listen, if he were thinking, I'm kidding around, but listen, if he were thinking that would be a legitimate complaint. That's a legitimate objection. He still has to figure it out. Here's the point. Any number this man figures out that he's going to need or want 30 years from now is not going to be the exact number he needs or wants. But I'm going to show him how to I'm going to give him a process to get a good number. And that's the point. Is he better off planning toward a number that's slightly inaccurate, but starting today, 30 years out? Is he better off putting in his paperwork 2 months before he goes out, gets an exact idea what he needs or wants, and tries to take care of it in 2 months? I've done reports for people like that. Yeah, by the way, yeah, the numbers show you got to save 100% of your income and get a 200% rate of return to take care of your gap. That's what people look at you blankly going, wait a second, you're saying I can't eat? Yeah, it sounds kind of harsh when you say it. I guess I am. And then they're staring at that chart going, well, what's done 200%, assuming I could even do that? Nothing. What are you trying to tell me? I can do math. You can't retire. Not in the way you want to. See, this is the point. We have a tendency to make the perfect the enemy of the good. If we can't get a perfect number, forget it. You're not going to get a perfect number, folks. You can get a good number. You can get a good number. Now, I'm hoping he's maybe going, okay, maybe I agree with, I can't believe I agree with this guy, but maybe I can. How do you figure out what you're going to need or want? How do you figure out what you're going to need or want? He kind of said it before. This gentleman over here, he almost said it before. How do you figure out what you're going to need or want? I call it the B word. Budget. This is a barrier to planning. When you hear the word budget, what do you think of? Good things or bad things? I know what I think of. I think of bad things. I think of discipline, sacrifice, giving up fun things I enjoy doing. Ever do a budget with your spouse? That's a perfect example of how we budget. We look at budgets in the wrong way. Perfect example. Number one cause of conflict in a marriage is money. We start doing a budget. I'm telling you, this is the reason we don't get the answers that we're looking for, because we look at budgets negatively. We think of cutting things. If I have to do a budget, that means I got to cut things out, and I don't want to do that. When you do a budget with your spouse, what do you think happens? I drink over. It's embarrassing how much I spend on that a month. It's embarrassing. What do you think happens when I tell my wife, yeah, I'm spending $100 a month on coffee in the morning? It's like, drink it at home. Don't they sell that at a gas station for 50 cents? Buy it there. I mean, I'm protective. I go, I'm not the problem, you are. Then I point out something she's doing, and that's where the argument ensues, and I'm on the couch. And, and you're like, yeah, you know what? And then you're thinking, I'm never doing that one again. I'd rather live in ignorance the rest of my life, but I'm not ending up on this couch. I mean, my point is, we're looking at budgets in the wrong way. I'm not going to stand up here for 2 days and make you feel like garbage going, give up the Thursday morning golf game. And I know you were talking about imported beer before. Drink domestic. I could do that to everybody in this room. And I'm telling you, I'm not solving your problem. You know why? And I'm not here to insult anybody. But studies have shown in 4 weeks, I could yell at you, but you'll be back to doing what you were doing in 4 weeks. So I'm not even saying it's hopeless. We're looking at budgets in the wrong way. Don't, in this exercise, look at a budget as a means to cutting stuff out of it. As a matter of fact, forget about that. I want you to do this budget exercise this morning, not to cut things out of it, but to put a value on the things you enjoy doing. If you want to see what you care about, take a look at the memo section in your checkbook. Take a look at your next itemized credit card statement. In 5 minutes, you'll see what you care about. And see, that's the important thing. A budget is a reflection of our values in real dollar terms. Those habits die hard, folks. See, nobody tells you this. Habits die hard. And if you're going to try to solve your problems by killing your habits to save more, I'm betting my house against you. If that's the first thing you're going after, if I'm going after my cup of coffee in the morning to solve my retirement problems, I am betting my house against me. Habits die hard. This is my point. I'm going to continue to drink that in retirement. I'm not going to lie to myself. That's what I want you to look at budgets as a reflection of your values in real dollar terms. A reflection of your values in real dollar terms, and you will see what you care about. Those behaviors will continue in retirement. Listen, folks, we have to change how we plan. We have to. And I want you to think about this a second. A nice graphic there. Okay, this is the reason why we have to change how we plan. Who taught you about money? Who taught you about money? Parents did. Parents did. Yeah, they might not have sat you down and said, this is money and this is how it works. They didn't do that, at least I don't think they did. But you watched what they did. By the way, quite frankly, in this country, read The Millionaire Next Door. Poverty and wealth is generational in this country, not based on what was left behind, based on what you learned. Most millionaires haven't inherited $1. Did you know that? It's basically with the behaviors that they learned. They might have watched mistakes that their parents made and said, I'm never doing that again, or they might have learned good things. I don't know what you learned. I hope you learned good things. But the reality is today's world's a lot different than when your parents entered the workforce and started planning for retirement, and that's what you watched. Your parents thought they were going to work to age 65. Whether they did or not, I don't know. How long do you think they thought they were going to live? Probably age 70. How do you think they looked at retirement? As an extended vacation. Their objective was to blow their money before they died, to make sure you didn't get it. If you think about it, it's kind of true, right? Here, let me give you some statistics. Let me explain how retirement's been redefined. Let me give you some statistics. The average age of the average federal employee that retired last year was a little over 60 years of age, which was a lot higher than what it usually is. It's usually upper 50s, so about 60, okay? According to the IRS, if you're alive the day you retire, you know what the statistical probability of you living to age 84 is? According to the IRS? You got an 80% chance of living to age 84 if you're alive the day you retire. That's according to the IRS. So here's my point. Do the math on that. You're going to live a quarter to a third of your life in retirement. What's the number one fear of a person entering retirement today? Outliving their money. Outliving their money. You know, I don't get people going, I don't think I've ever run into anybody going, yeah, I want to go to Europe 9 times a year over the next 5 years and make sure my kids don't get my money. I mean, that sounds almost ridiculous right now. I get people going, see, retirement's been redefined to an active, independent lifestyle. I just get people going, hey, man, I want to whack some golf balls in the morning. I want to hang out with family, kids, grandkids. I want to travel 4 times a year to each kid or whatever. I mean, everybody's got their own definition, but it's an active, independent lifestyle. You need to put a price on it and make it measurable, okay? See, by doing this budget, you're putting on a measurable definition of success. Now this definition is no longer a vision, it's measurable, it's quantifiable, okay? But you got to look at it in the right way. All right, now, let me explain something. You're going to go home, my hope is, I hope you go home after you do this budget exercise this morning. I really hope and pray that you go home, if you're married, and tighten up your numbers with your spouse. Because you got to get a number on this. Now, here's the thing. Now, that's, if people are honest with me, that's where they're like, I'm not doing that. Just got out of my last argument, and I'm not going back in there again. Amen. Yeah, I'm not going back in the octagon. I just got out of it. Listen, I'm going to give you 2 rules of engagement with your spouse if you're married. Okay, 2 rules of engagement to prevent an argument. Rule number 1. She's right. You know, that's really worked for me. It has worked for me. Well, see, this might be a little difficult, but you can't tell them what to cut out. That's the first part. That works for you, right? But they can't tell you what to cut out. No, but you got to start there. You know why? I know what you're saying, but if you don't have that rule, you'll start lying to each other. Like if I know I'm in trouble for what I'm doing here, what am I going to tell her? I'm not doing $100 a month on Starbucks or coffee. I'm doing $25. That way we can get in a little argument, not a big one. You won't be that upset. We can move on. It's a fake number now. And then she'll go, wow, you really changed. I'm not doing that. I'm doing this. And it's lower. And then we're both like, we know it's a ridiculous number. It's not even true because we're both trying. It's like fake discipline. It's not even the number. And we both know it's not even close. And it's a ridiculous exercise, but at least we didn't argue. I have to know I can be safe to tell you the truth. Because that's the way you're going to get honesty. I have to be, you can fix the problem later, but you got to get honesty on paper. So that's the first rule. You got to make a commitment to each other to do that. Second rule of engagement, are you going to be able to account for every dollar coming into your household? Like you know where every dollar's going? No, you're right. No, give it up. And see, that's the second argument that ensues. If you can't account for every dollar, who you blaming? Them. It's your fault. What are you doing with the money? It's both your faults. They're going to go, what are you talking about? And they start yelling at you. And then that's where the fight ensues. Listen, you both don't know. And it's both your responsibilities. I call it budgetary leakage in your budget. According to the National Foundation for Credit Counseling, the average American can't account for 20 cents on the dollar. Now, for pre-retirees, that might sound high to you. But for younger folks, they can probably relate to it with easy access to credit cards. Easy access to credit has destroyed budgets, absolutely destroyed it. So my point is, you're going to get to a point, I don't know whether it's 20 cents on the dollar or 5 cents on the dollar or 50 cents on the dollar, but when you get to your budgetary leakage, don't blame your spouse. Here's the point though, that's the money you go after first. I call it winning the winnables. Instead of trying to stand outside of a coffee shop for the next 30 years going, do I retire sooner or have that cup of coffee in the morning? You're going to lose. I mean, you're going to lose 5 years into this thing. You're going to go in there once and then you're done. See, all you have to do, thrift is a perfect solution to this for your unaccountable money. All you have to do is, it's called winning the winnables. All you have to do is raise your hand to thrift and go, can you please take my money from me before I can do damage to myself? And they'll take it from you. It's called fixing your leaky pipes first. Instead of getting the most powerful shower head you can find, fix your leaky pipes. That's going to have a bigger impact. Go after your unaccountable, you don't know where the money's going. Go after that money first. Go after that money first, okay? You can win that battle. If you don't, and again, I know what I'm spending on that. That is not leakage. I know where it's going. I'm talking about stuff you don't even know where it's going. Second dollars you go after. Second dollars if you have a problem. Long-term commitments. Long-term commitments. And I call that, see, people try to be brilliant all the time. Be brilliant at the right time. It's called, like a sports analogy, for those of you who follow sports, it's called making plays. Somebody's not doing anything during the entire game, but at the crucial time, they make a play. And that's what I'm trying to tell you to do, make financial plays. And what I mean by that is this: when you're about to make a long-term decision, work a little harder at it, negotiate it, research it, work hard for that point in time. That'll have a bigger impact. To give you an example of what I'm trying to illustrate here, I just had this happen a couple months ago. My daughter she got into an accident, but she was she was in nursing home administration. She was out in Nevada, out in the middle of the desert. Anyway, she hit a mule deer, totaled her car. And she had a pretty bad concussion. She was a little slow on the uptake and everything. She was a little slow in her thinking, so I had to go out and get her and bring her home. Anyway, she totaled her car, so we had to go get a car. So in our town, I brought her to the car dealership. We went in to get a car. And she picked out the car. It was kind of a quick process. A couple days we went in there, knew the dealership, been buying cars there. So picks out a car, says, this is the one I want. Okay, talk to him. He said, okay, we'll have it ready for you. And last question I asked him was, what's the interest rate on the car? She wants to finance it over 5 years. What are you charging? He said, about 3. Thanks, appreciate it. Okay, we're good to go. Have it ready in a couple days. Anyway, my bank's a couple blocks down. As we're leaving there, I stopped in there really quick and just said, look, I bring my daughter in there. I go, she get in a car. What would you charge her on an interest rate for 5 years? They said about 3. So I said, okay, at least I know the car dealership's legit, and we'll be ready to go. Go back in 2 days later, pick up the car. Anyway, he's kind of taking them through like what you do with the car, how to use it, and all that. Anyway, last person comes out is the finance person. Goes, okay, Mary Ellen, come on back with me. And I'm sitting there. Anyway, I started realizing she just had a concussion. She can barely, she was having a hard time stringing sentences together. So I figured I better go in there and see what's going on. So I said, okay, she's a little slow on the uptake. Just summarize everything. What's the interest rate? What's her car payment? Guess what the interest rate was? It wasn't 3. It was 3.7. So when I got to 3.7, she didn't even tell me what the car payment was. I said, let's go. Come on, Mary Ellen, we're leaving. She was like, what do you mean? I said, I can get 3 from a bank. And she was like, what bank? I said, 2 blocks down. That's where I bank. She goes, well, I'll have to redo the paperwork, which is telling in and of itself. Isn't it? You knew you could have done better. You chose not to. And I said, that's not my, I even said, I go, that's not my problem. And she goes, can you give me 25 minutes so I can shop it? I said, you got 25 minutes. So we stood out there uncomfortably with the car guy. I mean, what do I care? But I stood out there. So 25 minutes later, she was like, okay, come on back in. I'll go back in with her, 2.7%. She clipped the whole point off. That saved her $15 a month. Now, that might seem like a big deal to you. That's a week of free, well, not for me, for her, but free coffee for a week for 5 years. Do you see what I'm saying? So instead of breaking my horns here for like 5 years trying to kill a week's worth of coffee and giving it up, I just did it with 25 minutes. Go after your long-term commitment second. Third thing you go after are your daily habits. But you know what? When you get to that third point, then it's on your terms. Do I give that up, or do I retire sooner? But then it's measurable. You know what I'm saying? You're comparing one thing versus another, and you're making that decision, and you can live by that decision then at that point. But that's the third thing you go after. Okay? Work in that order, and you'll get it's the easiest way of doing it. Okay? Listen, folks, this is all about budgeting. It's the foundation of planning. It's kind of what he said. It's the foundation of planning. If you're controlling your money and you know where it's going, nothing else matters. And if you're not controlling your money and you don't know where it's going, nothing else matters. We can give you more tips on how to put money in your pocket on Social Security, your FERS annuity, buying back time, all of that stuff. If you're not controlling your cash flow, it doesn't matter.
So could you give an example of the first line, the win-the-winnables line? Because if you don't know where that 20% is going to, that could be hard to fix if you don't know where it is.
Excellent question. It comes down to typically that stuff happens. 2 things you got to do. you got to start. That is an excellent question. Like, how do I find that leakage? Which is a very good question and a very fair question. What typically you do, it's kind of a Texas two-step, and our budget reflects it. You sit down, do the best job you can with your spouse on listing where you're spending your money. Okay? You list it. And then track your expenses, everything for 60 days, and compare the two numbers on each item, and you'll see where your budgetary leakage is. Typically, it's where we have cash in our pocket and we're doing an impulse buy. That's kind of where it happens.
Going out to dinner?
It could be going out to dinner on a whim. Like I might be saying, you know what, we were just out doing this, that, and the other thing. Let's stop in at Chick-fil-A, but instead, we don't find one, or a McDonald's or whatever, and now we're stopping in at like a nicer restaurant, and it just kind of disappears in that way. There's just a lot of different little things like that. And my point is, try to operate off of, well, not even necessarily debit cards, but if you can operate off of like even cash more on controlling that, or maybe give yourself an allowance to control that leakage and operate a little bit more off of cash and have like a certain amount in your wallet or pocketbook or whatever and operate off of that, and when it's gone, it's gone. You really got to start controlling things. Like if I'm buying, like if I'm on a trip and I'm buying, like as I'm coming up here, I might buy a couple of bottles of water. I always pay cash because I have a certain amount of cash that I have for a couple of weeks, and when it's gone, it's gone. So you kind of measure that a little bit, manage it a little bit. But that's a great question. Never had that question. That is a very good question. Okay? So listen, I'm going to point out this gentleman again. His number will be wildly inaccurate if he doesn't take something into it. He could do a perfect budget. That number will be wildly inaccurate if he doesn't take something into account. What does he need to take into account? Inflation. Inflation. He's got to take, I want to tell him how to establish his goal right now. We're going to do this exercise. I got a personal monthly budget, and I have an inflation factor chart in your handouts. You're going to do I'm going to tell you we're going to explain how to use the budget. But you're going to basically do a projected retirement budget. You're going to add up that number. And then you're going to go to your trusty inflation factor chart. I have inflation rates of between 3 and 10%. I know. Listen, let me explain why I have it so high. I know. Well, let me explain why. I know. Now, let me give you some numbers down. You can, listen, the science is your budget. The science is your budget. That's you, and that's where you're spending your money. I call that the science of it. This is where the art comes into play. I call it the art is your inflation. And what I mean by that is you got to project out an inflation rate. Now, let me give you some numbers to anchor yourself off of in doing this exercise. The historical rate of inflation over the last 100 years has been, according to Robert Shiller, he's a Yale economist, 3.23%. That's been the average rate of inflation over the last 100 years. Now, for my plan, when I do my retirement planning, now he's going to laugh at me, I use 5 for my personal planning. And the reason why I use 5 is we've printed a lot of money. I mean, think about COVID-19. You know, how much have we printed with COVID-19? Like what, 2 trillion? I think it's like $2 trillion we've printed. Now, the thing about now listen, my economic philosophy, I'm praying I'm wrong. But when you print that much money, what are you doing to the value of a dollar? You devalue it, and the economic principle is you have inflation. So 1 3/4% inflation rate's pretty aggressive, especially for a gentleman such as yourself. But that's the reason I use it. We've never printed as much. As a matter of fact, I read a statistic the other day. We've printed more money in the last 10 years than we did in our first 235 years of existence as a country. So that's kind of scary. So listen, I hope I'm wrong. And listen, I've read articles from economists that say we're not going to, we've printed a lot of money, that's true, but we're not going to be the Weimar Republic or Venezuela, and here are the reasons why. We're the reserve currency in the world, and we don't have to exchange our currency for any other currency, and everything's pegged to us. Fine, I hope that guy's right and I'm wrong, but I'm using 5, because I believe in my theory. That's where the art comes into play. Okay? So you pick that out. Now, I'm not going to use his 30 years. I'm going to keep the math easy. Let's say I do my budget, and let's say it's like $4,000. Yours is higher, but let's just say $4,000 a month is your budget. Now, let's use 5% inflation. I'm going to explain how to use this so you can do this exercise. 10 years down the road, the multiplier is 1.55, right? You see that? So I multiply 4,000 by 1.55. That number in 10 years is $6,200. So my goal in today's dollars, 10 years down the road is $6,200. So you do pick out whatever inflation rate you want to use, but you look at 30 years. Now you're going to get depressed. But I am telling you right now, we can solve that problem. I know he's going to get depressed. But I'm telling you, if he applies the principles of taking advantage of retirement planning, he'll get to his goal. He's got the time to do it. Okay, now, that number is 6,200. Here's the point. I want you to kind of do a rough idea what that number is this morning. Here's the reason why. We're going to throw up on you this afternoon on what you're going to get on your FERS annuity and Social Security benefits. So you're going to see how close you get to that number. And guess what I'm going to do tomorrow morning? The Grim Reaper me. I'm going to take money out of that check for your FEGLI, your life insurance, your FEHB, your health insurance, your Medicare Part B premiums, and if you enroll in the voluntary long-term care program. We're going to take money out of that check. See, there's a method to our madness. God bless you. Then what's left over after we take money out of that check is the strategy you need to develop for your thrift. So we try to work this in order. Does that make sense? Establish the goal. Tell you your income. Let you calculate it. Take money out of it, and that establishes what you need to do in your thrift as far as the strategy. How much you need to save and where you need to save it. And we'll talk about that tomorrow afternoon. So there is a method to our madness here. Okay? Because at the end of the day, that's when you have a complete plan. Excuse me. Your plan is complete when you can tell me what your gap number is. Now listen, if the only thing you get out of this class is your have number, God bless you, man. I'm glad to hear that, but you don't have a complete retirement plan. Your plan is complete when you can tell me what your gap number is. That's when you have a complete retirement plan. Now, let me talk about landing the aircraft. Okay, now let me explain what I mean by that, because a lot of people ask me, how often should I be doing this exercise? Gentlemen like himself, 30 years out, once a year. That's it. Why? If he is doing this every week, every month, he's freaking out. He doesn't need to freak out. Don't micromanage it. You get too emotional. Put your stuff in place. Do a gap analysis. Put your stuff in place. Let your benefits work for you. Re-examine it. So the following year, he gets his new budget number, multiplies it by 1.48 or whatever his multiplier is. It's going to be a slightly different number. Maybe he crushed it in the thrift. He might be ahead of the game. He might be a little bit behind. He might go, geez, I didn't do so well last year. I got to save 5% more. That's a pivot play he can do if he wants to. Instead of waiting and saying, I got to save it. That pivot play is too big, 100% of your income. See, it's smaller, thus more attainable. By him doing it this way, it's like balancing the baseball bat. If it moves a little bit, you move your hand a little bit. Now, for some of you in this room, you're closer. You're a lot closer. I get that. Once you hit 3 to 5 years out, every 6 months. If you're in that 3 to 5 year range, every 6 months, because you're getting closer to the runway, you want to make sure you're coming in for a smooth landing every 6 months. Once you get 18 months out, every 90 days. Every 90 days. And by the way, it's all psychological. You shouldn't be making abrupt adjustments at that point. You just need to know psychologically you're going in for a smooth landing. And it kind of goes back to what he was saying before. Psychologically, and maybe you can relate to this right now, but I'll tell you what goes through a person's brain when they're getting close to go out and retire and they're getting ready to land that plane. They're like, this is a big decision. Can I really do it? Can I really do this? And I get people in a little bit of a panic. I just had one at the Pentagon. Really nice lady. I'm going to miss her. But she's been in our class every year for 8 years. Most conservative lady with her money I've ever met. Worried all the time. A little too worried in my opinion. But very nice lady. And she came in and she was like, I'm retiring. And said, congratulations. We're going to miss you and all that stuff. And but then after she said that, she goes, but I'm really not sure. And I was like, well, come on. What's the problem? I know you know every cent that's going to be coming in. I know that. You've been here every year for 8 years. She goes, well, I got variable expenses. It was kind of what he was saying. I got variables. I was like what? And she's like, I go out to dinner with my friends, and we go to the casinos every quarter. Every 3 months we go to the casino. And so I said, this is what I want you to do. And she ended up retiring, but I said, I want you to track your expenses every 90 days. You're going to be shocked at what a creature of habit you are. You don't know it, but you are a creature of habit. You're going to be shocked. I said, my bet to you is, I will bet you my house, you are going with the same friends on the same nights of the week to the same restaurants, and you're probably ordering the same stuff off the menu. And she said, when I think about it, you're right. Yeah, I am. I'm buying, that's what we do. We do the same, And I said, are you clearing out your bank account every time you go to the casinos? Like, let's clear it. Let's put it on a number. I mean, I knew she's too conservative. And she goes, no, I bring X amount of money. When it's gone, it's gone. I'll hang out if I lose it soon, and if I don't, and just It's just fun. I'm just with my friends. And see, it's a fixed expense. You just didn't recognize it. So when you look at it every 90 days, you're going to be shocked at what a creature of habit you are. You will see your variables are not variables. They're habit expenses. Okay? So lock yourself in when you're 18 months out. Okay? All right. Now, let me talk about the third way the system is designed for you to fail. This is how you all been conditioned. This is how you all been conditioned. If you found out you had a gap in your plan and you were committed to solving it and you were in a panic, you realized, I didn't really realize that I had a gap, but I do, and I have to fix it. What would you do? You've been conditioned to do this, and it's not the wrong answer, but this is the only answer anybody gives you because it's the only way anybody gets paid to solve your problem. What would you do? Like if you found out you had a gap, what would you do? It's not the wrong answer, but what would you do? I know what you would do just from what you've been saying. So you could do what? Or what would you do? I'll ask you too. I know what both of you would do. You would what? Try to save more? You would try to save more, right? So you start examining your budget, trying to figure out what I can cut out to save more, right? And that is a solution to your problem. Unfortunately, that's not your only solution. See, that's the only solution you've been conditioned to use to solve your problem. Yeah, do you see what I'm saying? I see commercials all the time of people walking on a beach, because they invested with an XYZ company, and they got the retirement of their dreams because that person was really smart, and they got me there. See, everybody's trying to tell you if you have a gap, you got to fill it in with money. Let me change your paradigm. If you're solving your problem in one way, then there's two ways of solving this problem, but you got to change how you're looking at things. You can't think in terms of filling in your gap with money. Think in terms of shrinking your gap. See, there's two ways of solving this problem. You can increase what you have by saving more, but you can also shrink what you need or want. Now I know what you're thinking right now. You're like, you just told me to drink my coffee. Now you're telling me to give it up. No, I'm not. What I'm trying to tell you to do is shrink or eliminate your phantom expenses. What are phantom expenses? Phantom expenses are things that we pay for, and the more we pay for these things do not affect the quality of our life in any perceivable way. We all have them. And what I'm trying to say to you is we are all paying for stuff. We're paying more for it. We just don't see it. We see no value in paying more for it. Let me give you three basic examples. First one is interest on credit card debt. Interest on credit card debt. I mean, here's my point on interest on credit card debt. If you have two credit cards in your pocket and you're forced to finance a purchase on one of them, one's charging you 20%, one's charging you 10%, which one would you choose? The one charging you 10 points is a lot of money. Okay, you wouldn't care about the spokesman, you wouldn't care about the name of the credit card company, you wouldn't care about your mileage points. Okay, you're going off the cheapest one. Now you're thinking, okay, I know that, but nobody does that. You want to bet? Average credit card balance in this country is $12,000. Average person has 2 to 3 credit card balances. And I'm telling you right now, that sounds bad, but easy access to credit has been very destructive in this country. And I'm telling you right now, I've talked to plenty of people, and they'll go, you really hate credit card debt. I'm afraid to tell you I got credit card debt. And when I ask them, they'll typically go, yeah, I got a couple. And I'll go, that's not good. And they'll always say they got a plan to get out of it. And I'll go, okay, to have a plan, you got to know the interest rate in which you're being charged. What's the interest rate on the 2 cards? I'm telling you right there, everybody always goes, excuse me? Yeah, the interest rate, those 2 cards, what are they? I don't know. And in all fairness to most people, they'll go, you know what? It's funny you mention that because I checked when I took out the 2 cards. What do you charge me on interest? I just forgot. And that's probably the same for all of us. We just forget, and then we just put it on whatever card happens to pop out first. And I'm telling you, 9 times out of 10, when people go back and look at their credit card balance, the higher interest rate usually is the higher balance. 9 times out of 10. It's a reverse snowball effect. It grew quicker than the other one. But my point is, when you define that in real cost, you get serious about getting out of it. And see, let me explain something. We got to change, and this is where I'm trying to say, if you apply shrink, you're going to hear this a lot from us over the next 2 days. Shrink the gap, not fill it in with money. Shrink the gap, shrink the gap, shrink the gap. And this is what I mean by that. Let's say, and I've seen, by the way, I just had one about 7-8 months ago that was worse than this. Let's say you had $20,000 at credit card debt at 20% interest. Okay? Do the math on that. That's $4,000 a year of phantom expense. By killing that credit card debt of $20,000 at 20% interest would be the equivalent of having an extra $100,000 in your thrift at a 4% withdrawal rate, which is the acceptable withdrawal rate on an investment. My question to you is, which one can you do quicker? Unless you're a hedge fund manager or Warren Buffett, you can get out of 20 grand quicker. Most people choose not to do it because you've been conditioned, do the best job you can on that credit card debt, but you got to max out that thrift. Everybody's getting paid except you. Everybody's getting paid except you. I just had a guy. Names will be, people become nameless here, but I just had somebody with a lot worse than that, and he had to retire because he had health problems. 75 grand of credit card debt. No, it's worse than that. He was putting 2 grand a month toward it. Guy was able to retire too. But he was looking at it in the wrong way, and this is the reason why. Let me go through this quick. 75 grand of credit card debt, paying 2 grand a month, not making a dent in it. Staying at 75 grand at 2 grand a month. Now, let's do the quick math on this. If he retires, because he was having chest pains, he loved his job, high clearance job, a lot of pressure, but he was like, I don't want to die. And he was just like, I really am sad about leaving the job because I've, advanced in my career, but had to, okay? Bottom line is he was having chest pains, felt like he had to retire. So the problem was he had this problem. And he was putting 2 grand a month toward it. And it was funny because he was in a seminar of mine and he was like, I need an investment advisor. And I said, well, I didn't know anybody in the area I was at. So I just said, talk to your accountant. That's what I told him. I just said, go talk to your accountant. He'll link you up with somebody. I didn't know. And he goes and the guy referred him. And the guy was like, okay, now I want you to think about this. To pull money out of your thrift, which is what they were focusing in on was their thrift, you need to pull $2,500 a month out of your thrift to pay a $2,000 bill. You got to pay the tax and then pay the bill. Okay? Now, at a 4%, that's $30,000 a year. That's 30 grand a year you need to pull out of your thrift to pay that $24,000 bill. Just to keep it where it's at. Now, he needed, do the math on it. At a 4% withdrawal rate, you need $750,000 in your thrift. He did not have that. He had about $650,000. This, by the way, this guy was smart. This guy was brilliant. I mean, he had really timed the market well, had done a great job of accumulating money in his thrift. And he understood the principles of investing. He knew he was going to retire soon, so where do you think he was putting his money toward? The G, because he knew he was going to need his money. Doesn't that make sense? It all makes sense. So he went and talked to this guy, and this guy's like, you need $750. You don't have it. You got $650. You're nuts. You're putting it in the G. You're never going to get there. He's like, you got to get more aggressive. And he's like, well, can you guarantee I'll get there? And the guy was like, no, but what choice do you have? He didn't like hearing that answer, so he was like, can I just talk to you a little bit? So we were talking, and he was telling me this whole story, and I was like, I got news for you. That's not your problem. You don't have any, see, the problem is they were viewing it as an accumulation problem. That wasn't his problem. He had a cash flow problem. That was his problem. It was cash flow. It wasn't accumulation. It's like, you don't even need this guy to accumulate money. You did a great job on your own. So I was like, just give me a balance sheet of everything you got. Just tell me everything, bad and good. Assets, liabilities, kind of what we were talking about, balance sheet, So he's running through his balance sheet. Anyway, final 2 things he said, kind of interesting. This is how he's able to retire. He's like, oh, I almost forgot. I got a piece of property on a river, divorce settlement from 25 years ago. Never sold it, but it's there. I don't even know what it's worth. It's like, ever get it appraised? No. Why not? I don't want to talk to her anymore. If you had money buried in your backyard, would you start digging for it because you got credit card debt? Well, of course I would. Start digging. Go get it appraised. And he did. It was worth over like around $95,000 and change. They got it sold for like 95 grand. My point is, 47 grand went toward the 75. Guess what else? His current spouse of 20 years gets an inheritance from a trust, from her grandmother. And it fluctuates between like $28,000 and $35,000 a year. My point is, they usually like paid off a little of their credit card debt and then go on a vacation or something. I said, can you live without that for like a few months? Well, of course we could. They killed the credit card debt. My point is, they eliminated a bill of 2 grand a month. The guy could retire. But see, when you're looking at everything as, when all you have is hammers, you're looking at everything as a nail, and you can't look at it that way. You got to look at it in terms of cash flow, shrink your gap. And that's how quickly you can make up ground if you apply shrink the gap principles, okay? Now the second phantom expense, now let me explain this, and I'm reluctant to say this. Your second phantom expense is taxes. Now listen, I don't know what your philosophies are in taxes, and quite frankly, it doesn't matter. You view taxes as a phantom expense. I'm going to prove it to you. Look, I don't even know what your philosophies are on taxes. Okay, I'm reluctant to say this where I'm at. But Congress views taxes as a phantom expense. Did you know that? There wouldn't be a tax. Congress writes the tax code. There wouldn't be a tax code Think about the tax code a second. The tax code is written to modify human behavior. If they didn't think you viewed it as a phantom expense, they wouldn't write anything in the tax code. You would just pay your taxes. I'll give you an example of what I mean. You can put money in your thrift pre-tax, can't you? Why is that written into the code? What are they trying to encourage you to do? Save your money, because they don't want to take care of you. Here's my point, folks. Forget about your philosophies on what they are on taxes. It doesn't matter. Okay, view it as a phantom expense. Okay, view it as an expense, because it's our number one expense. We spend more in taxes in food, clothing, and shelter combined. Not only while we work, but in retirement. It's our number one expense in retirement. Here's my point. There's things you could be doing in your benefits that'll not only shrink your tax burden today, because that's all anybody ever focuses on. How can I save on my taxes today? I'm going to give you ways that you can save on your taxes in retirement. There's things you could be doing in your benefits right now that you can save on your taxes in retirement. Now, you're all looking at me like I'm crazy. You're like, you know the tax code when I retire? How do you know that? That'll be a neat trick, because I've had accountants say that to me. I don't need to know the tax code when you're retired. Do you know why? Because you have pivot plays. Pivot plays shrink taxes. Pivot plays shrink taxes, folks. I don't need to know tax code. I just need to give you a pivot play, which I will. It'll be the last thing I do before I leave here. I'm going to give you, this morning, I'm going to give you a pivot play. Okay? Pivot play shrink taxes.
Moving south, though, too.
That too. That too. It could be, yes. But my point is, regardless of your philosophy on taxes, you have to view it as a cost of getting at your money, or just, you got to view it. It's a paradigm shift. So get out of your philosophies on taxation. Forget about it a second. Just view it as an expense. Because if you do that, you're going to get serious about shrinking your gap. I am telling you right now, you will. You will. The third one is inflation. Now, you don't control inflation, the Fed does, but there's things you can do to mitigate the impact of inflation by making the right choices in your thrift. Okay? Now, there's three elements of accumulation. The amount of time that I have to accumulate my money, the rate of return on my money, and the amount of money I'm saving and investing. Out of these three elements, which element do I have the least amount of control over? Yeah, a person that's younger would say rate of return. I get what he's saying. Most of you said rate of return. See, I would submit to you it's time. There's no right or wrong answer here. I would submit to you it's time. Now, why don't you think about that a second? Why would it conceptually be time? You can't go back in time. And nobody knows the day they're going to die either. Most people, it's the book of life analogy. You're given your book of life the day you're born. Each page represents a day. 2 rules with your book. Turn a page, you can't turn it back. And rule number 2 is nobody knows how many pages are in their book. It's the element of the least amount of control. And we will prove to you, because I can understand where a gentleman like him would say rate of return. We're going to statistically prove to you how time controls your rate of return. It's going to determine where you should put your money in your thrift. Okay? It also controls how much you have to save, obviously. The longer you wait, the more you have to save. Listen, I know my audience, you guys are like freaking out going, thanks a lot. Time's the one element I don't have. Thank you very much. Now I'm really worried. Listen, we're going to show you ways to make up for the time you've wasted. We're going to use pivot plays to do that. We're going to show you how to leverage your benefits to make up for lost time. We're going to use a concept called double duty dollars. Just look out for that. It's a way of taking $1 and using it to solve more than one problem. Okay? And let's go. Where do we start? Okay, what we're going to do. Where are we doing on time here? You know what? I can't believe I actually caught up. Okay, this is what we're going to do. We're only running a little bit behind. I'm going to give you 25 minutes. You're going to take a long break, and you're going to do a budget. Okay? We're going to take 25 minutes and do this. So what I want you to do is I want you to pull out that budget spreadsheet. I call it the Texas two-step. All right? Now, when you pull out this budget, what we are going to do, you're going to take a look at I want you to focus in on the left side right now. I want you to keep it simple, but I want you to take a look at where you're spending your money right now. Okay? Now, the first grouping of items, okay, for you pre-retirees, now you're going to be different, okay? Don't listen to what I'm saying right now. No, yeah, that's great. He hasn't been listening the entire time. Now I'll listen. No, I'm just kidding. But you're going to go something different. You'll see. Okay, the first group of items for you pre-retirees, skip it unless you have a debt consolidation program, credit card debt, you're paying off a student loan, something that you are financing long-term, because I have like what you're putting in your your deposits for your FERS annuity, and what you're putting into your thrift. That's disappearing when you retire, so it's kind of dumb to waste your time doing that. So skip your first group of items unless you have one of those things, okay? Then I want you to go down the line and go to, I did the best job I could. It's front and back. Itemized list of stuff. If I'm missing anything, write it in. Car insurance, divide by 6 or 12, however you're doing it. And just put everything in there. Now, once you do that, I want you to examine that list on the far left and see anything. Look, I want you to examine any item there that's going away when you retire. And get rid of it. And then carry everything else over to the far right. Along with, like you said let's work off of what you said. He goes, I'm moving south. That's the reason I asked that question. See, I get people going, hey, I'm not going to be in this, godforsaken place. I'm going there and it's going to be paradise. That's fine. But you got to you need to do a little bit more research. Go to Bankrate, like a place like Bankrate.com. They have information on the cost of living in different parts of the country, cost of real estate, different things like that. And maybe you can make money on the sale of a piece of real estate if you're moving, but that's where you can get specific on that. Add in any extra expenses that you might have in a more expensive place, but start examining that. Okay, but take a look. Carry everything over from the far left over to the far right that will continue in retirement. I want you to add that number up. And then based on when you're going to retire, pick out your inflation factor number. Okay? And then multiply it out. What I want you to do in big numbers, after you pick out your inflation rate and the year you're going to retire, in big numbers, I want you to write it on the far right column here and circle it in big numbers. Because this afternoon, I want you to start getting a ballpark of where you stand on all this stuff. Because he's going to throw up on you this afternoon on everything you're going to get, and I want you to go, okay, I need $7,200. According to what he's saying up here, it looks like $6,200 or whatever. I need $1,000 a month. That's $12,000 a year. That means on a 4% withdrawal rate, Chris says I need 4%. That's $300,000 I need in my thrift. I only have $250. I need, you'll start doing the math yourself. Okay? So I want this interactive. So I'm going to give you 25 minutes. I'm going to be hanging around. So if you have any questions or whatever, feel free. Okay? 25 minutes. I'm going to put my timer on. Take your break. Get a cup of coffee. Use the bathroom. Bathroom breaks are always in effect, by the way. Go. Thank you for your time and attention, by the way.